When considering Windows security, one of the first things you're going to be thinking about is NTFS permissions and share permissions. Stay tuned to find out more.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Oh, hey there. I know you're excited because we're talking about Windows access control. Something near and dear to my heart. I don't use Windows. But if I did, I feel like this is something that I would need to know, because when I hear access control, it's kind of a ubiquitous term, right? But access control in Windows comes from a couple of different places, like NTFS, share, there's a couple other things. Well, where are we starting?
Well, I guess the best place to start would be with those NTFS permissions, because they are the file permissions that are found with inside of your operating system. How do you control access to maybe some sensitive documents inside of there, or maybe a sensitive area in the file system? NTFS is typically where you're going to be going, especially if you're logging into the machine, either remotely through something like RDP or just directly sitting at the desktop itself. So how do we do that? It's actually not that easy. Windows does a really good job of making this a pretty simplistic process. We just have to know to do it and what they mean when they show their terminology. So let's jump into this Windows machine I have, my trusty 2012 machine. That's right, I flog it daily here because what the heck, I had it laying around, right? Here we go. I'm just at the root of the directory itself. You can see I got some folders. I don't know what this is. It's something super ID file, cool. But we have different folders, right? So let's take this users directory, all right? If I right click on it and I choose the properties option, you'll notice it's giving me some information about it. I'll zoom out just a bit. There we go. And then I have these tabs at the top. One of them is security, and that is what we are concerning ourselves with today. So under here we have the object name, which is C users, and then the group or users names that have some sort of access to the system. So this is all groups. We have the everyone group, the system group, administrators, and users. Some of them are probably local groups. Some of them are probably domain groups, like anything with the coolco / whatever those would be, domain groups. And then down below, we actually have the permissions for each one of those objects. So very straightforward, graphically ran, nothing too crazy here. I can give something like write permissions, which means I'm allowed to modify the object itself, right? Create and remove things. And maybe if it's a file and it has text or information, I can modify that in some way, shape, or form. Now, it can be a little confusing because you have modify right here, which also allows you to do those same things. But one of them will allow you to delete and the other will not. Write does not allow you to delete the object. It'll allow you to delete stuff inside the object. So if I had a notepad with a bunch of secret passwords or whatever, if I had write, I could go in there and I could change those passwords, but I couldn't delete the file. If I had modified, I could delete the file. Now, that wouldn't stop me with those write permissions to go in there and just remove all the content, and the file is still there with no content now, so you've effectively deleted, but the object is technically still there. So that's the difference between write and modify. Of course, read allows you to see the contents of the file itself. You also have list folder contents, so maybe I want you to be able to see this object, but not the objects that are below it, some subfolders. Don't want that. And of course, the read and execute flag, always a good one, where not only can I read this, but maybe it's a script and I need to be able to execute it. I can set that permission, allow someone to just go, okay, I can see what the script does. Yeah, that's good. I need to run this. And then to have that execute flag right there for them. I think the reason you see those two together is because you need read to have execute inside of a Windows operating system. So there you go. Now we also have advanced settings in here, which can get a little more granular. So you can click advanced. You see things like if you go to inheritance, let's stop there for a second. Anything that you create, so if I have something like a folder and I stick stuff inside it, it's going to, by default, inherit the permissions of its parents. Sometimes you don't want that. I need to have separate permissions from the parent and child objects. Inheritance is where you would go to change that function. I can also do some adding, and you can see I'm seeing basically the same types, but as you, the permissions that are able to be set, and you can see you get a little more options. You select a principal, who is this going to apply to, what type are you doing? So if I came in here, I think Justin's in this system. Did we add you, Justin, at some point in time?
I think so, yeah.
I think we did. There we go. And then we can change the type, allow or deny. this applies to this folder. So you start to see you get a little more fine control as you work your way through these advanced options. You also can do special permissions if they're available, but there you go. I give him full control. That's fun. Only apply these permissions to the objects and or containers within this container. Again, kind of that inheritance thing. And there you go. You click OK. So you can also check your effective access, and that can be a helpful thing because you're like, I feel like I should have control over this, or I should have this ability and it's not working. So you can always check your effective access, give it the system or the user that's trying to do that, or the group that they belong to see what it is that they should be getting. And if you don't see what they should be having, you got to figure out what's causing the conflict, because permissions can run afoul of each other from time to time and kind of work in conflict. And eventually one of them is going to win out, and that could cause you some permission issues. But there you go, the basics of working in permissions inside of a Windows operating system. Very straightforward. I do enjoy it. I think it's great. A whole lot easier than chmodding 755. Thank goodness for the symbolic form of Linux, because this is super, super easy and I like it. So there you go. That's the basics of NT permissions.
All right, so NT permissions. This is one of those things where you and I, we've talked before the show and have fun. Yeah. We tend to be on the Linux side. I know you have some Windows experience.
Yeah.
Not so much. Yeah. Not so much. So I see that NT permissions, it's very reminiscent of what I've seen in Linux. But then there's also share permissions. And did I miss them somewhere in there, or are those different?
Yeah, they are different. So when it comes to your share permissions, you've got to remember that you are now setting permissions for some form of remote access. That is, and when I say that, what I mean is I'm sharing them out via the network using something like SMB, right? That's the Windows file sharing capabilities. So even Linux machines could open these shares and look at them. But here comes the thing. First, let's talk about how we set those permissions. So let's take a look at the screen here. And I've got a share called company share already. I'll zoom in a little bit. There you go. And if I right click, scroll down, find that lovely properties option, it'll bring open the same kind of screen that we saw before, a dialog box as Windows calls them. And right next to the security tab, you see the sharing tab. So yeah, Justin, it kind of was in a different spot. It's not in the same area. You can roundabout get to it from that area, but this is normally how you want to do this. And you have two options here. I will just say, just go with advanced sharing. You can use the other sharing if you need some quick and fast sharing happening, but most of the time, you just want to click that advanced sharing option. And you can see the option to share this folder has been checked, so it is being shared. I'm giving it a share name. What is it going to be called? So if someone is looking for it, they will be able to discover it and go, oh, there's that share. That's the one I'm looking for. And down here, how many simultaneous users can access it? Could be a form of access control. Go in here and create 1, 2, however many, so that it doesn't get overwhelmed, or maybe you're trying to keep, stress down to a minimum on this server. Any comments you want to put about it? And then, of course, you have permissions right below that. That's what we're looking for. We click that permissions, and for this specific object, we have everyone with full control. Now, you're seeing a difference right here immediately, Justin. Hopefully, you're picking up on this. We don't see all the lovely permissions that we saw when we were looking at NT permissions, right? We see full control, change, and read. If I want everybody to be able to read what's going on in here, I click read. If I want them to be able to add and delete things or modify the contents of them, I click change. And if I give them all that stuff, well, then there you go. Go ahead and click full control.
This is one of those things where I see this, I go, everyone has full control? This makes me nervous.
Yeah.
Is this where we could do like a deny everybody and then do exceptions to in these share permissions?
Yeah.
Let's say that it's just me and you that need access to this. You could just deny everybody else and then add us,
yep,
right?
Totally could do that. I can just put in the everyone group and then add us. This will be, now when you have a denies, be very careful with doing denies in Windows, because they come down ham-fisted with the hammer, okay? They like to deny. So be very sure that you want to employ a deny here. I think the easier thing would be at this point to take the everyone group out, or just give them read permissions and then add Justin and I into a group called, share owner or whatever. and then give us those full control so that we can't. But that is with the share permissions. Now, remember I talked about permissions kind of like running afoul of each other, where they can grind gears against each other. NTFS permissions and share permissions will do that. So being able to effectively work them together is important. The principle that you need to understand and live by when it comes to Windows share and NTFS permissions is, A, both of them apply. If you have share enabled, the permissions that you have set will apply on the object, as well and in conjunction with the NT permission that you've set, right? So this is where it gets hairy. So how do we manage this effectively? The typical modus operandi when it comes to effectively managing this is give the object the share permissions full control, right? To whatever, you can do everyone if you like. Because what happens is that Windows will go with the most restrictive option. So you're like, well, you just took all the restrictions off, but NTFS still applies. So since NTFS has much more fine control over the objects themselves, it's a better place for us to set those more restrictive policies. And then it will default to those restrictive policies. And that way we're not going, oh, is this conflicting with share permissions? If we just set full control on share, the object is now shared, right? Which is what we want. And it's being controlled via the access to it anyway, via the NTFS permissions. And we only have to go to NTFS to set more control over it. We don't have to worry about trying to mix and match the two. Just set the object with full control when it comes to share, and then get more fine-tuned down in those NTFS permissions. So that's how you're going to work these things together, and hopefully that'll give you an effective strategy for actually getting the results you're looking for when it comes to access either through a share permission or through NTFS.
Speaking of share, I've had this happen in a company that I was at.
She's a great singer.
Yeah, she is. She is. And no, I'm not going to do it. I've been sitting like at a previous job, and then the printer just starts cranking up and starts printing things, and I'm like, "What is it? Well, what? Hold on a second. Who printed this?"
Billy from HR is using your ink. Huh?
He's like, "I don't know who did it."
I got to get that print.
So does Windows have facilities to like restrict? So I'm thinking of shares in that capacity as like data shares, right? Like network drives, those type things.
Right.
But what about other resources like printers or maybe even scanners, copiers, those type things? Can we restrict access on those as well?
Yeah, totally. There is permissions or access controls for your printer objects as well, hiding right there inside of your control panel. So just like Justin said, we don't want everybody always having the ability to do whatever they want with any printer in the system, in the environment at large. So you just go into let's jump in here, go into the control panel or search it out. However, I'm old school. I always go to control panel. I have devices and printers right here for me. And this one, your mileage may vary as far as like whatever operating system you're using. And then I see my printer objects sitting right here. Right click on one. Now you'd be super tempted to jump on that properties button, but that's not where you go. Go to printer properties. This is where Microsoft and I start diverging in our methodologies and philosophies.
Real quick question.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
One allows you to do this and the other does not.
Oh, obvious.
I mean, we can look at it. You can see like, so here is the printer properties, the properties of the printer itself, and you can see all the tabs, sharing, the ports it's using, advanced, color management, security, right, device settings. But if you go to properties, then you just take the properties of I think it's the print driver. Right? So
yeah,
it's telling you
like
the
physical
model,
device instead of like the
what hardware is being used,
like the user interface,
Correct.
so to speak.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
Why don't they just bundle those all together?
It is wicked confusing a lot of times, but just know if you want to do actual properties or actual security on this, it's under the printer properties. And of course, you can go to security, and there you go. We've seen this before. Lather, rinse, repeat. Here are the user objects. I want to have control over this, and what can they do? You can also share it from here, right? List it in the directory, do all that fun stuff. But that security object is what you're looking for. Also has, look at that, advanced. You can do a lot of stuff from here as well. So now we're back to something we're comfortable with. We just need to know how to get there so we can set those things up and manage these devices. And you do see that the printer permissions are a bit different. You have print, Right? It doesn't make sense to like read, write, and execute kind of thing. So you have print, manage this printer, give them the ability to stop print jobs or manage the print queue, manage documents, again, a little less control, but still some managerial duties, and then special permissions, which are all sorts of weird fun stuff. But sometimes you have to get into that. In my career, not something you do a ton of, so I'm not going to belabor the point there. You get the idea. We go into that area, we hit that security button, and we set those permissions.
You know, I've been thinking about this whole Windows thing, and one of the reasons that I was like, all right, Windows, you and we're going to break up. I got to go.
We're not friends anymore.
Because I can't tell you when I was younger how many times someone would go, registry file, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I've had other people go, oh, well, I saw on the internet, it told me to go delete this registry file, and now my system's hosed.
As it probably is.
Yeah. I think they're getting better about it.
It was called breakyourwindows.com. Weird site.
Yeah. I don't know why I listened till. That's gotten better, but I feel like that's something maybe on some older systems, or if you have maybe savvy users to really like that. We can set permissions on the registry, right?
Yeah, we totally can. The Windows registry is an extremely important piece of the puzzle. That's why Justin's kind of making a joke about hosing up his system, because if you do it wrong, the system no longer works. So, warning, Will Robinson, be very, very careful with ever messing around with your registry. Make sure you know exactly what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, before you make those. Make copies of your registry in case you do mess it up. Maybe you can get back in there and drop in that old copy that actually worked. Because sometimes you'll just lose functionality. You won't actually lose access to the system completely, but it could happen. But if you just search for out the, maybe you've got start run kind of thing, or if you're running like a Windows 10, you've got the search bar down at the bottom, and just do reg edit like that. And that is the registry editor. And from there you go. I'm now able to change all these things about the system. These are very important settings for the system to know how to properly run, which is why we want to secure it, right? So I think if you go into view or edit, here we go. And there we go, permissions, right there. Hit permissions, oh look, lather, rinse, repeat, yet again. Set your object and the security for that object. So you have your group users and names, put them in there. You got full control, read, and special permissions. That's kind of where you're at when it comes to the registry. If you can make modifications to the registry, I know that I use that a lot of times to try to like bypass malware detection for running like custom PowerShell scripts that will give me access in the system. A lot of times I'm doing that with post-compromise when I'm doing red team type of stuff. So I would want to lock that down as a blue teamer so that that could not occur. Hopefully, if the user that they've compromised the system with doesn't have those permissions, they shouldn't be able to do that, okay? So could be beneficial for us to know that we can set permissions, and where that is done, again, just go under Edit and hit Permissions. And that should take you where you want to go. You set your permissions accordingly, and you should be ready to rock with locking that down.
I'll tell you what, Daniel, there's several things in this episode that I'm probably going to go apply to my parents' computers because I'm tired of getting phone calls going,
It would probably help.
So this is broke. It's so...
I went to this breakmywindows.com site.
I started deleting registry stuff.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to go check that out, and you should go check it out as well. But for this episode, I think it's time to get out of here. So signing off for IT Pro TV, I've been your host, Justin Dennison.
I'm Daniel Lowry.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.